Hello everyone! Welcome to Downtown Tailoring.
I was working in this dress and then I thought, oh, I have to make a video about it. Because look at that. This is a beautiful casual denim dress. But just by seeing it in the mannequin, you can sense that there is something wrong with it. The shoulders are just too straight. I'm gonna pin those shoulders as I pin it to my customer. As you can see, the edge of the shoulders have some cuffs. It is a really interesting cut, but because of the cuff, the shoulder them are too straight, not in the natural position. It's just easier to manufacture it that way. But we have to take into account that a well-balanced bodice has the shoulders a little bit inclined, not straight. Let me show you this now that I have it on my table. If I place a square ruler at the edge of my cuff, you can notice that they made a perfect 90 degrees angle, which is obviously very different to the natural shoulder slope. The reason I found that this video can be so interesting is that many tailors understand that they cannot make a cuff if the angles are not straight, and it's not true. Let me show you how to do it. I'm gonna mark my slope as I measure it to my customer. First mark on top, and then I'm gonna use my ruler and lift and mark underneath. As you can see, I get an angle. Now I'm gonna do the same and I'm gonna mark inside my dress. And as you can see, I still have the second part of the cuff inside. So now I'm gonna work inside of my dress, of course, and I'm gonna straighten my seam lines. And I'm gonna make the same marking inside of the cuff. So again, I have an angle. But still, I still have the cuff sewn. Like it's still sewn and I still need to open it. And this will be my next step. I'm gonna open that cuff and I'm gonna try to open as much as I can, just because the more I open, the easier will be to sew. So my next task is to pass all the marks to the other side. If you didn't notice it before, I'm using the ruler as an anchor to mark with my chalk. When you have a cuff, you have 4 layers of fabric sewn in the same angle, that when you fold it, they come to the opposite. And this is why you see like an accordion. My next step is to straighten up those lines. And this is a very delicate process, because if you move too much the angles, then it won't look good. But the thing is that when you mark the lines, not always those marks are perfect. This is why you more or less have to go, kind of in between. Don't worry, if you made a mistake, you just fix it after. This is my shoulder, and before I sew, I'm gonna open the neckline edge. Because I'm working so hard at the other side, I'm gonna choose the easier way to finish this other side. Okay, let's go to the other edge, and it has a little hem that I'm going to open. But hey, better late than never. Before I start sewing, I'm making sure that I'm opening as well everything at the other shoulder. I have that thing that I have to be working both sides at the same time. If I finish one completely, then I'm too lazy to do the other. Does that happen to you? I'm gonna stitch the 2 edges together just to fold it. Now I'm prepared to sew. As I have everything all set, everything will be so easy now. I'm gonna start by stitching back the bias in the neckline section. It is so small that it's a little tricky to sew. What I do is to stitch one side first and secure it, and then I stitch the other side. And this is what I have ready to be sewn together, and then just fold it as a hem. I'm going to finish my last mark by marking my last angle because of the fold. This way you get a perfect job. And now I'm gonna secure my shoulders with pin all along. I make especially sure that the creases are in the same spot. This is very important. Otherwise, those seams can be shifted and then you won't get your cuff as you desire. Pinning for me always is the key. Although I recognize that I've worked with so many good tailors that don't pin and the job is good. After I pin it, I realize that the necklines won't fall very well aligned if I go correctly. This happens very often due to the front neckline being lower than the back. So my first plan, that was the easiest way, won't work. So I remove again the bias and I'm gonna sew the shoulders without the bias. Remember that I'm trying now to carefully follow all the lines. I make sure to stop right on the crease before I change directions. And I will keep going until I finally reach the end. Now my seam is done and I will open the original shoulder seam, which was very straight. Be careful with the blade, huh? So my shoulder seam is done and I'm just folding a little bit just to confirm that more or less will look good. And it seems to me that it will be okay. So I can proceed and finish my seam. For that, I'm gonna leave a little bit of seam allowance. In this case, I'm gonna leave 1/2 inch, which is too much in regular circumstances. But remember that I have an alteration shop and I always have to leave a little bit of room in case of my customer find that I took in too much. So in my case, 1/2 inch is not a lot. Now I'm gonna go to the other side and I'm gonna do exactly the same. As the other side told me that it might be okay. I have to confess that I don't do angle cuff every day, so I am a little bit scary each time. When I finish my cutting, then I'm going to my serger to finish those raw edges. And of course, a good iron in this case will be so important. First, I'm removing the old creases in the seam allowance as they will be at the opposite side. And then I open that seam. If it weren't because of the redo, it would be great to cut the fabric in each crease. But I already explained you that I have to leave some room for going back. Anyway, when everything is somewhat flat, I'm gonna iron again the creases the way they should be. I'm gonna make sure to iron them all, and I'm gonna ensure that the seam allowance is open so it will be less bulky. This is a little bit like a Tetra Rubik's or scramble, as I have to make sure that everything comes to its original way. This part of the ironing is so essential. And remember that it's so important that you don't move the creases because you want to keep the cuff in its original width. This is why I have to iron every little detail. Well, I think that everything is well ironed now, and I'm gonna go back to my sewing machine to make all the finishes. I'm gonna start making the hem at the very edge, and I'm gonna stitch down the cuff, making sure that I'm sewing exactly in the same line that I sewed before. Then, as usual, I'm gonna make a stitch in the ditch seam to tack the hem up. I feel like it's a little bit mashed, so I open it back. And something else that I noticed is that the shoulder line is not straight. So I'm gonna open again the cuff because I'm gonna fix that little point that bothers me. As I showed you before, it was just a little bit. So I'm just gonna stitch this point a little bit more in. No big deal. And remember, it will be very important to open the other stitch. You cannot leave 2 stitches there. Now I'm gonna make sure that my seam allowance is open and I'm gonna close that back. Trust me, it's just easier to correct those errors at the beginning than do the whole thing and then have to open it again. Yes, I've been there. Now the cuffs seam that is all aligned. So I'm gonna go back and do my stitch in the ditch tack, but I'm not gonna go until the end because when I did it before, it was just too smashed. What I'm gonna do instead is to make my tacking by hand. My fingers are indigo now. I'll wash my hands when I finish because you don't know, too many chemicals. So I'm gonna start by sewing inside of the dress the part of the cuff that I didn't tack with the sewing machine, and then I'm gonna go up through the seam and tack the cuff at the top part. Nothing crazy, just stitch it, and I'm making sure that this tack is very loose in fact, because that will give to the cuff the sense of natural, like it will look like it's just sitting there, that is not tack, is not secure, but it will be secure. And look at that. See, it's looking good. And now is the part of finishing the neckline, and I have to do it the right way by stitching together the bias, and then I'm gonna sew the bias to the edge. As I told you before, I stitch one side first, and then I'm gonna go to the other side and then stitch the other side. It's just because this bias is so small that it's safer to do it this way. When I have my bias well put, then I have just a line that I can then fold it, and then it will make a very, very, very nice finish. This in fact is the correct way to do it. At the beginning, I was hoping for doing the other way because I already, let's say, spent the budget of my customer, let's say what I charge in the other side. You know, I never want to overcharge my customers, so I always try to kind of balance the job with what I charge. But I already finished, and here you go. Look at those shoulders. Now they look in the natural way. Now you can see the waist sit in the shoulders in the natural way. As you can see, the cuff is right there. It's not going anywhere. It's very secure, but it's just sitting there. It looks good. By lifting the shoulder, now the waist is in its natural position. This is the before and this is the after. Let me know in the comments if you noticed before how the shoulders can affect so much the overall look of a garment. And remember, if you find this video entertainment or useful, please give us a like and don't forget to subscribe, share, comment. Bye!